The elephant in the room with respect to inflation is the fiscal policy. It's the debt, not the ceiling, but the fact that we're running these massive deficits. And until the federal government reduce spending, these quarter-point increases are going to be completely ineffective. And the problem is Powell refuses to call Congress out and mention that the driving force behind all the inflation that they've been creating is reckless government spending. And as long as the government keeps spending, inflation is going to get worse, and so is the current financial crisis. And nobody wants to admit we're in a financial crisis. It is worse than the one we had in 2008. It's just getting started. Ultimately, the Fed is going to cut, but it's going to cut as inflation is accelerating.
Peter, in a word, who's going to feel the move today the most?
Of course, everybody that has debt is going to feel the pain of rising interest rates that makes that debt harder to service. And of course, there's a lot of debt that is still low because it hasn't matured yet. A lot of corporations, a lot of people in the real estate market, particularly commercial real estate, borrowed money 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And the higher rates are, when those loans mature, it's going to be that much harder for them to get the financing to roll them over. And then you have the prospect of very disorderly bankruptcies throughout the economy. I warned for years that the banks would start collapsing for the precise reason that they're collapsing now. The Fed kept interest rates at zero for so long. That's what allowed these financial institutions to load up on overpriced, low-yielding treasuries, mortgage-backed securities, and other loans. Plus, U.S. government auditors from the Fed, FDIC, they encouraged the banks to buy these long-term treasuries and mortgage-backed securities because they gave favorable accounting treatment. The banks didn't have to mark them to market as long as they could pretend they would hold them to maturity. So the entire house of cards was erected by the Fed and the U.S. government. And now it's collapsing, and they're acting like they have nothing to do with it, and they're trying to figure out how to put out a fire that they lit. And of course, the problem is they're not putting out the fire, they're throwing gasoline on it.